This is 2 hours of the most disturbing Adventure Time lore you've ever heard. So sit back, get comfortable, and let me take you through something that's been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. Adventure Time looks like a candy-coloured fever dream about a kid and his stretchy dog punching monsters. Bright colours, silly voices, made-up words like mathematical and algebraic. It ran for 10 seasons on Cartoon Network from 2010 to 2018, and on the surface, it seems like the most harmless show ever made for kids. But Pendleton Ward, the guy who created the whole thing, once described it as Candyland on the surface and dark underneath. And he meant that literally. Because the land of Ooo, this magical place where candy people walk around and ice wizards kidnap princesses and everything seems whimsical and fun, is actually built on top of a nuclear apocalypse. The candy people are walking on irradiated soil, the rivers under their kingdom are radioactive, and the show hid all of this in plain sight for years before anyone really started putting the pieces together. I'm going to walk you through the scariest episodes and storylines in this entire series, and by the time we're done, you'll never look at Adventure Time the same way again. We're talking about an ancient cosmic entity voiced by Ron Perlman, whose only goal is to extinguish all life in existence. We're talking about a good man who slowly loses his mind, while the people who love him can only watch. We're talking about dictatorships, cannibalism, actual hell dimensions, and the implication that everything you thought was cute about this show is a product of mass extinction. And the worst part is, it's all connected. So let's start at the beginning. Not the beginning of the show, but the beginning of the world the show takes place in. Because once you understand what Ooo really is, every single episode feels different. About 1,000 years before Finn and Jake ever went on an adventure, Earth looked a lot like it does right now. Humans had civilization, technology, cities, all of it. Then something called the Great Mushroom War happened. The name sounds whimsical, like everything else in Adventure Time, but the mushroom in the title refers to mushroom clouds, as in nuclear weapons. The Great Mushroom War was a full-scale global nuclear exchange that wiped out nearly the entire human species and left their civilization in ruins across what would eventually become the land of Ooo. Ward actually confirmed that the show's post-apocalyptic elements were influenced by the 1979 film Mad Max. He never intended for the nuclear backstory to be something the show hit you over the head with. Instead, he kept it to things like cars buried underground in the background and other details that don't raise any eyebrows. That's a direct quote from him. He wanted the horror to be invisible unless you were paying attention. And if you go back and rewatch the show, knowing this, it's everywhere. The opening credits themselves briefly show the remains of nuclear bombs and weapons scattered across the landscape. You'll see human skulls half buried in dirt during random adventures. Ruined skyscrapers poke out of hillsides. Old cars sit underwater. The wreckage of human civilization is literally the scenery of the show, and the characters just walk past it like it's wallpaper, because to them, that's all it's ever been. They were born into a world shaped by mass extinction, so to them, it's just normal. The setting became explicitly post-apocalyptic after a Season 1 episode called Business Time, where an iceberg floats to the surface of a lake and thaws out a group of frozen businessmen from the old world. Ward said after that episode, the production crew just ran with it and committed to the nuclear backstory. But even before that, the clues were there if you knew where to look. Here's where it gets really unsettling. The Candy Kingdom, Princess Bubblegum's whole domain, where all those adorable candy people live and dance and have fun, is literally built on top of a pond of nuclear waste. In an episode called The Vault from Season 5, we learn that one of Finn's past lives, a woman named Shoko, helped Princess Bubblegum establish the kingdom by covering up an irradiated river at the site of what would become the Candy Castle. They paved over a radioactive river and built a kingdom on top of it. The candy people have been living on contaminated ground for centuries, and they have no idea. And it goes even deeper than that. Every cute character in Ooo, every candy person, every fire person, every lumpy space person, they're all products of nuclear mutation. The radiation from the Mushroom War didn't just destroy human civilization, it transformed the planet. It mutated everything. The cute, colourful world of Adventure Time exists because nuclear fallout created entirely new forms of life from the ashes of the old world. Princess Bubblegum herself is over 800 years old, a sentient being made of candy, that only exists because radiation fundamentally altered the rules of biology on Earth. And then there's Finn. Finn the human. That's literally what they call him, Finn the human, because being human in the land of Oo is so rare that it becomes your defining characteristic. Finn isn't special because he's brave or because he's a great fighter. He's special because his entire species was nearly wiped off the face of the Earth. For most of the show's run, Finn believes he might be the last human alive. He's a 12-year-old kid running around a world shaped by the extinction of his own people, and nobody around him can really understand what that means, because none of them are human. The show eventually reveals that small groups of humans survived the war and settled on distant islands. But Finn doesn't know this for most of his life. He grows up as the only human in a land full of beings that were born from the catastrophe that destroyed his kind. Think about how lonely that is. Think about what it means to be the last of something. And then think about the fact that the show wraps all of this in bright colours and funny voices and an upbeat theme song, so kids watching it have no idea what they're actually looking at. That's the genius of Adventure Time's horror. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't jump out at you, it sits quietly in the background, in the ruined buildings and the buried bones and the irradiated soil, and waits for you to notice it. And once you do notice it, you can't unsee it. Every episode becomes a little bit darker, because you know what's underneath. The Mushroom War itself is something the show never fully explains, and that makes it even more haunting. We know it ended with a nuclear exchange and the dropping of something called the Mushroom Bomb. We know it happened sometime after 1982, because in later episodes, a character named Simon Petrikov is heard singing the theme song from the TV show Cheers, which premiered that year. We know that the war likely ended approximately 1,000 years before the events of the show, because a flashback in an episode called Simon and Märty includes a time card explicitly stating that those events took place 996 years ago. But we never learn who was fighting or why. We never get a clear picture of how it started or what the sides were. We just see the aftermath, the ruins, the mutations, the absence of humanity. And in a way, that's scarier than any explanation could be, because it means the apocalypse in Adventure Time wasn't caused by some cosmic evil or alien invasion. It was caused by people. Regular human beings destroyed their own world, and the show doesn't even bother telling you why, because the reason doesn't matter. What matters is what came after. And what came after was a world where magic returned to the Earth, where new civilizations rose from the ashes, where a boy and his dog could go on adventures through a land that looks beautiful and feels fun, but carries the weight of billions of dead underneath every single frame. Pendleton Ward built a world where the apocalypse already happened and everyone moved on. The horror isn't in the destruction, the horror is in the forgetting. But the Mushroom War is just the foundation. It's the canvas that everything else is painted on. The real horror in Adventure Time comes from what survived the apocalypse, and from what existed long before it. Because the scariest thing in this entire show isn't the nuclear war, or the mutations, or the ruined cities. It's something that was already ancient before humans ever existed. Something that crawled out of that nuclear wasteland with only one purpose: to end all life, everywhere, forever. This is the complete story of the Lich, and I need to warn you, once you understand what this character really is and what he represents, you'll understand why Adventure Time is one of the darkest shows that's ever aired on a children's network. The Lich is voiced by Ron Perlman. If you know that name, it's because he played Hellboy in the movies, Clay Morrow in Sons of Anarchy, and voiced Slade in Teen Titans. The guy has made a career out of playing characters that radiate menace, but when he voices the Lich, something different happens. Time seems to stop. The show's usual energy, its bouncy music and silly dialogue, all of it just vanishes the moment this character opens his mouth. The Lich doesn't crack jokes, he doesn't monologue about his plans. He speaks in these slow, deliberate sentences that feel like they're coming from somewhere very old and very cold, and every word hits like a brick. Adventure Time's creators once described the Lich as being without any whimsy. They said he is evil incarnate, and in a show that's built on whimsy, where even the villains are usually goofy or sympathetic in some way, having a character who is just pure, unfiltered evil makes him feel genuinely alien. He doesn't belong in this world, he doesn't fit, And that's exactly what makes him so terrifying. So what is the Lich? He's not a wizard who went bad or a demon from another dimension. The Lich is an ancient cosmic being. He is, according to the show's lore, the physical manifestation of inevitable death and the extinction of all life. His essence arrived on Earth millions of years before the series via something called a catalyst comet. These comets are fundamental forces in the Adventure Time universe, and they represent either creation or destruction. The Lich is tied to the green catalyst comet, the one that embodies evil and extinction. Finn, by the way, is tied to the blue comet, the one that embodies good. These two forces have been locked in a cycle of conflict that stretches back billions of years, long before humans ever existed. The Lich himself claimed that before the universe existed, there was nothing, and before there was nothing, there were monsters. He describes himself as the last scholar of GOLB, which is basically the show's way of saying that the Lich has existed in some form since before reality itself had rules. He's not just old, he predates the concept of time, but the Lich's physical body, the one we see in the show, came into being at the end of the Mushroom War. When the mutagenic bomb detonated, the Lich possessed a human being who had been submerged in the bomb's radioactive waste. That person became the vessel for this ancient evil, and the Lich walked the earth in physical form for the first time. His goal from that moment forward was simple and absolute. He wanted to extinguish all life in existence. Not conquer it, not rule it, not reshape it. End it. Completely. Everywhere. Forever. A hero named Billy eventually defeated the Lich and imprisoned him inside a tree wrapped in amber, deep within Princess Bubblegum's castle. For years the Lich just sat there, trapped, waiting, and then a tiny snail cracked the amber. The Lich had been subtly possessing this snail, controlling it from within his prison, and the snail's small actions over time were enough to set him free. The first major Lich episodes come in Season 2, with Mortal Folly and Mortal Recoil. Princess Bubblegum sits Finn and Jake down and tells them about the Lich, this undead creature with barely any flesh left on his skull, a walking corpse with green fire for eyes, and she's terrified. This is Princess Bubblegum, one of the smartest and most capable characters in the show, and she is visibly afraid. That tells you everything about how dangerous the Lich is. Finn and Jake have to fight through an army of skeletal warriors just to get close to the Lich. And when they finally confront him, the Lich doesn't fight like a normal villain. He doesn't throw punches or use gadgets. He speaks. He uses his voice to try to break Finn's will, to make him give up, to make him stop fighting. The Lich's greatest weapon isn't physical strength, it's the crushing weight of despair he projects onto everything around him. Finn manages to destroy the Lich's body, but here's the thing about an entity that represents death itself. You can't really kill it. The Lich's disembodied spirit survives and possesses Princess Bubblegum's body. In Mortal Recoil, we see possessed Bubblegum transform into this decaying, hulking monster, her candy body rotting and warping around the Lich's evil presence. It's one of the most visually disturbing images the show ever produced. The Lich is eventually expelled from her body, but he doesn't disappear. He ends up possessing the same small snail that originally freed him, hiding in plain sight again, right there in the background of episodes, waiting. Then comes Season 4, and the Lich makes his next move. He murders Billy, the hero who originally imprisoned him, and wears Billy's corpse like a skin suit. Think about that for a second. The Lich kills the greatest hero Ooh has ever known, and then puppets his dead body around, using Billy's face and Billy's voice to trick Finn and Jake into doing his dirty work. He convinces them to collect magical gems from all the princesses across Ooh, telling them it's part of a plan to stop some great evil. They trust him because they trust Billy. They have no idea they're helping the thing that killed their hero. The gems power up a book called the Enchiridion, which opens a portal to the multiverse. The Lich's plan is to reach something called Prismo's Time Room, a place where wishes are granted with cosmic power. And his wish is simple: the extinction of all life. That's it. No conditions, no caveats. Just end everything. When Finn discovers the truth and smashes the Enchiridion to stop the portal from opening, it backfires. The destruction of the book accidentally opens the portal anyway, and the Lich, Finn, and Jake all get pulled through into the multiverse. This leads to a two-part episode at the start of Season 5, Finn the Human and Jake the Dog, where Finn is transported to an alternate timeline called Farm World, where the mushroom bomb never detonated. In this farm world timeline, a man named Simon Petrikov used his magical ice crown to freeze the bomb before it could explode. He died doing it, crushed under the weight of the frozen bomb. Without the detonation, the Lich never came into physical being, and humanity survived. Finn lives a normal life with a family and a regular dog version of Jake. But here's where it gets really dark. Even in a world where the Lich was prevented from being born, his evil still finds a way. Farm world. Jake gets corrupted by the well of power and literally transforms into the Lich. The show is telling you that the Lich is inevitable. He's not just one villain in one timeline. He is a cosmic constant, an evil so fundamental that it will manifest in any reality, through any vessel, by any means necessary. You can delay him, you can redirect him, but you cannot prevent him from existing. Eventually, the Lich makes it to Prismo's chamber and gets his wish partially granted before Jake manages to alter the wish with some clever wording that sends them all home. But the Lich doesn't stay down. He never stays down. In the Season 6 premiere, Wake Up and Escape from the Citadel, the Lich kills Prismo's physical body. This is significant because Prismo is essentially a god, a cosmic wish granter who exists in the space between dimensions, and the Lich just murders him to commit a cosmic crime severe enough to get himself sent to the Crystal Citadel, an interdimensional prison holding the multiverse's worst criminals. The Lich doesn't want to escape the Citadel. He wants to get inside it so he can corrupt it and everyone trapped within. But something unexpected happens. The Citadel's guardian, a massive entity whose purpose is to protect the prison, bleeds regenerative blood. This blood douses the Lich and does something that all the heroes of OO never managed to do. It transforms the Lich into a giant, harmless baby. This baby is adopted by two characters named Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig, and they name him Sweet Pea. You'd think that would be the end of the Lich, but the show doesn't let you off that easily. In a later episode called Gold Stars, Sweet Pea is just a kid going to school, trying to live a normal life. But when he's threatened and mocked by two bullies, the King of OO and Toronto, the Lich briefly re-emerges from within Sweet Pea. He terrorizes them with nightmarish visions, and for just a moment, you see that ancient cosmic evil flash across the face of this innocent child. The Lich is still in there. He's dormant, but he's not gone. And then there's the extinct world. Through the show's multiverse lore and the Distant Lands specials, we learn about an alternate version of the Lich who actually succeeded. In one universe, the Lich made his wish and it worked. All life was extinguished. Every living thing in that entire reality just died. And this version of the Lich, who BMO calls Jerry for some reason, is left wandering an empty, silent universe with nothing but decay and stillness. He achieved his ultimate goal, the extinction of all life, and what remains is absolutely nothing. Just an empty world with an empty monster who has nothing left to destroy. That's the thing about the Lich that makes him so different from other cartoon villains. He doesn't want power. He doesn't want revenge. He doesn't want to rule anything. He just wants everything to stop. He wants the silence that comes after the last living thing dies. And the show actually showed us what that looks like. A dead universe with nothing in it, and it's one of the most haunting images in the entire series. The Lich is Adventure Time's way of personifying the concept of extinction itself. He's the heat death of the universe, given a skull face and a Ron Perlman voice. And every time you think the show has defeated him, every time it looks like the heroes have won, the Lich finds a way to persist, because you can't really defeat death. You can delay it. You can transform it. You can turn it into a baby and give it a cute name. But it's always there, waiting inside the thing you thought was safe. That's why the Lich is the scariest character in Adventure Time. He doesn't have to try to be frightening. He just is. He exists to remind you that everything ends, and that some forces in the universe don't care about your heroes or your magic or your adventures. They just want the silence. There's one more thing about the Lich that I need to mention, because it shows you just how carefully Adventure Time constructed this character. The Lich has a speech pattern. When he talks, which isn't often, he speaks in this particular cadence that Ron Perlman delivers with terrifying precision. His most famous line comes when he addresses Finn directly. He says, "You are strong, child, but I am beyond strength. I am the end, and I have come for you, Finn." The creators of the show specifically designed the Lich to be the one character who speaks without any humor, any irony, any self-awareness. Every other villain in Adventure Time has a personality. The Lich has a purpose, and when he talks, he sounds like he's reading your obituary. The Farm World episodes deserve a bit more attention too, because they do something really clever with horror that most people miss on their first watch. When Finn is transported to the timeline where Simon Petrikov stopped the mushroom bomb, the show isn't just showing you an alternate universe, it's showing you what Earth would have looked like if the apocalypse hadn't happened. There are houses and farms and families. Finn has a mother, a father, a little brother. Jake is just a normal dog who can't talk or stretch. It's a world where nobody has superpowers because the radiation that created the mutations never happened. But this peaceful world is fragile in ways that Ooh isn't. In Ooh, the characters have already survived the worst thing that could happen. They're post-apocalyptic. They've adapted.
Farm World hasn't been tested yet, and when the mushroom bomb eventually detonates in the Farm World timeline, because Finn's actions accidentally trigger it, the destruction is even more horrifying because these are normal people with normal lives being wiped out. They don't have magic or powers or any of the tools that Ooh's inhabitants developed to survive in a mutated world. They're just humans, watching the sky turn green as everything they know gets erased. The show also does something brutal with Farm World Marceline. In the main timeline, Marceline is a vampire, immortal, practically indestructible. In Farm World, she's still half demon, but she's ancient and decrepit, having aged normally for 1,000 years without the vampirism that preserved her in the main timeline. She lives alone in a crumbling house, and she tells Finn that if the bomb goes off, everyone will die. She's seen this story before, or a version of it.
She knows what's coming and she's too old and too tired to stop it. Farm World is Adventure Time's way of saying that the apocalypse isn't a one-time event. It's a possibility that hangs over every timeline, every reality, waiting for the moment when something slips and the dominoes start falling. The main timeline already lost. Farm World was given a second chance. And when that second chance fell apart too, the show was making a point about the inevitability of large-scale catastrophe. If you don't get destroyed one way, you'll get destroyed another. The only difference is timing, but the Lich represents horror on a cosmic scale. He's too big, too abstract for the really personal kind of dread. For that, Adventure Time has something else entirely.
A storyline that isn't about a monster trying to destroy the world, but about a good man slowly losing himself while the people who love him can only watch. And honestly, this might be the most disturbing thing the show ever did, because it's the one storyline that feels like it could happen to someone you know. His name was Simon Petrikov. Before the Mushroom War, before the Land of Ooh, before any of the adventures we watch in the show, he was just a regular guy. An antiquarian, which is basically someone who studies and collects ancient artifacts. He had olive skin and dark brown hair and wore blue glasses. He had a fiancée named Betty Groff, and they were in a loving, committed relationship built on a shared passion for science and history. Simon was kind, intelligent, optimistic, and completely ordinary in the best possible way.
He was the kind of person who would have lived a quiet, meaningful life if the universe hadn't decided to destroy him piece by piece. One day, Simon purchased a jeweled crown from a dock worker in northern Scandinavia. He didn't know what it was. He thought it was just an interesting artifact for his collection. But the moment he put it on, everything changed. The crown gave him ice powers, the ability to freeze things, to control snow and cold, to survive in conditions that would kill a normal person. But it also started eating his mind. Every time Simon wore the crown, he would black out, hallucinate, and behave erratically. He would say things he didn't mean and do things he couldn't remember. And when the episodes ended and he came back to himself, he would have no memory of what had happened. Betty saw what the crown was doing to him, and she left. Not because she didn't love him, but because watching the person you love become someone you don't recognize is one of the most devastating things a human being can experience. Betty couldn't handle it, and honestly, it's hard to blame her. Simon was disappearing, and there was nothing either of them could do to stop it. The crown slowly transformed Simon's body along with his mind. His skin turned blue. His nose became long and pointed. His hair turned white and grew into a massive beard. His body temperature dropped. His memories faded one by one, like someone was going through the filing cabinet of his life and pulling out folders at random. First, the small things went. then the important things, then everything. But here's the cruel twist, the Crown's magic also made Simon immortal. It kept him alive through the Mushroom War, when nuclear bombs fell and civilization ended and billions of people died. Simon survived the apocalypse, but by the time the dust settled, he was barely Simon anymore. He was becoming someone else, something else, a creature called the Ice King. The show introduces the Ice King in its very first season as a comedic villain. He's this pathetic old man in a blue robe who kidnaps princesses because he's desperately lonely and doesn't understand why nobody likes him. He's played for laughs, he's annoying, he's incompetent. Finn and Jake beat him up in basically every encounter, and he just keeps coming back like a sad delusional stalker. Voiced by Tom Kenny, the same guy who voices SpongeBob, the Ice King is designed to seem ridiculous. And then Season 3 happens. In a 2-part episode called Holly Jolly Secrets, Finn, Jake, and BMO find the Ice King's old video diaries. They start watching them expecting to find embarrassing secrets they can laugh about. Instead, they find Simon Petrikov's recordings he made as his mind was deteriorating, as the Crown was turning him into something else. You watch this intelligent, articulate, kind man slowly lose the ability to form coherent sentences. You watch him get confused about where he is and what year it is. You watch him cry because he knows what's happening to him and he can't stop it. In one of the video diaries, there's a warplane visible through Simon's window. The scenery outside shows no devastation yet, which means the recording was made right as the Mushroom War was beginning. Simon was documenting his own mental destruction while the world was destroying itself around him. 2 apocalypses happening simultaneously, one global and one deeply personal, and the show just shows it to you in a pile of old VHS tapes. This was the episode that changed everything about how audiences saw the Ice King. He went from being a joke to being one of the most tragic figures in animation history. TV.com said it was sort of amazing how Adventure Time has transformed the Ice King from an irritating antagonist to one of the most tragic figures on television. Because now every time you see the Ice King doing something stupid and pathetic, you know that underneath all of it is a good man who lost himself and will never get back. But the show wasn't done. Not even close. Season 4 brought an episode called I Remember You, and it is widely considered one of the greatest episodes of Adventure Time ever made. It was storyboarded by Cole Sanchez and Rebecca Sugar, who would later go on to create Steven Universe. It aired on October 15th, 2012, and was watched by 2.535 million viewers. Critics gave it universal acclaim, with Eric Cohn of IndieWire calling it the finest entry in the series' history. The episode starts with the Ice King showing up uninvited at Marceline's house. He wants her help writing a song. Marceline is annoyed, which is her default reaction to the Ice King, because he's clingy and weird and won't leave her alone. But there's something else in her reaction too, something sad that you don't fully understand until the episode reveals its hand. The Ice King pulls out a scrapbook full of old papers and photos, and Marceline starts looking through them. Among the pages is a photo of a young Marceline, a little girl with a message scrawled on the back. The message was written by Simon Petrikov over 1,000 years ago, back when he still had enough of his mind left to form sentences. It's a letter to Marceline, apologizing for whatever he might do when the Crown finally takes him completely. He tells her he can feel himself slipping away. He tells her he's afraid that she'll lose him. He tells her he's sorry. The Ice King picks up the letter. He can't understand what it means. He thinks it's song lyrics. He starts trying to add music to it, completely oblivious to the fact that he's holding a 1,000-year-old apology written by the person he used to be, to the child he used to protect. When Marceline calls him Simon, he responds with, "What, mon?" He doesn't know his own name anymore. The episode ends with Marceline breaking down in tears, singing the words of Simon's letter, while the Ice King happily plays drums, totally unaware of what's happening. And as they sing, the show cuts to a flashback. Almost 1,000 years earlier, after the Mushroom War, a young Marceline is sitting alone in the wreckage of a destroyed city, crying. Simon finds her. He runs over, digs a teddy bear out of the ruins of what appears to be a destroyed Toys R Us, and gives it to her. She stops crying. She looks up at him, and for just a moment, in the middle of all that destruction, something good happens. That teddy bear is Hambo. Fans of the show know Hambo from earlier episodes, where it was established as Marceline's most treasured possession. Now we know why. It was the last gift she received from someone who loved her, before that person forgot she existed. Critics noted that the Ice King's behavior throughout the episode was deliberately patterned on dementia, with Marceline acting as a caretaker for someone suffering from Alzheimer's disease. The mood swings, the memory loss, the confusion, the baby-like reactions, it's all there.
And Marceline's frustration and heartbreak mirrors what real families go through when watching a loved one disappear into cognitive decline. Adventure Time took one of the cruelest diseases in existence and wove it into a cartoon about an ice wizard and a vampire, and it worked because the emotional truth underneath was completely real. Season 5 continued the story with Simon and Marcy, which showed the full extent of Simon's relationship with young Marceline. The episode is set 996 years before the present, in the immediate aftermath of the Mushroom War. The time card in the episode states this explicitly. Simon and Marceline are wandering through the ruins of Earth, surrounded by the remnants of human civilization. The cities are destroyed. Green, mutant creatures, products of the bomb's radiation, roam the streets. Simon is already partially transformed at this point. His skin has started turning blue, and the crown is calling to him constantly. But he fights it because he has to protect this little girl. He keeps Marceline fed, finds them shelter, teaches her right from wrong, and tries to keep her spirits up even as his own mind is crumbling. When dangerous mutants threaten them, Simon has to put on the crown to save her life. But every time he uses the crown's power, he loses more of himself. He's making a trade, his sanity for her safety, and he makes it willingly because that's who Simon Petrikov is. He would rather destroy himself than let a child get hurt. There's a scene in the episode where Simon is fighting off mutants using the crown's ice powers, and to hold on to his sanity while the crown tries to consume him, he starts singing the theme song from Cheers. Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. This broke people when it aired, because the show Cheers premiered in 1982, which means Simon grew up watching it in the normal world before everything went wrong. He's clinging to a memory of normality, a TV show jingle, as his last anchor to who he used to be. And it's not enough. It's never going to be enough. The crown is going to take everything eventually. That's what the Ice King's story is really about. It's about the slow, irreversible loss of everything that makes a person who they are. It's about watching someone you love become a stranger who looks at you with no recognition. It's about a man who documented his own destruction because he couldn't prevent it, and about a little girl who had to let go of the only father figure she had left because he didn't remember her anymore. The Ice King is still in there somewhere. Deep down, some fragment of Simon Petrikov persists. That's why the Ice King keeps seeking out Marceline without understanding why. That's why he kidnaps princesses, because some corrupted echo of his love for Betty drives him to search for his princess over and over again, never understanding what he's really looking for. The show later confirmed this connection. When Simon first put on the crown, he chased Betty through the city, blasting ice and calling for his princess. 1,000 years later, the Ice King is still doing the same thing. He just doesn't know why. And the worst part is that Simon's story doesn't even have a clean ending. The show's finale eventually restores his sanity, but at the cost of losing Betty forever. She merges with a cosmic entity to save him, and Simon gets his mind back, but loses the woman he spent centuries unconsciously searching for. He finally wakes up, and the first thing he learns is that the person he loved most sacrificed herself so he could be free. Simon Petrikov spent 1,000 years as a prisoner of his own mind, and when he finally broke free, the world had moved on without him. That's the horror of the Ice King. It's not monsters or demons or nuclear war. It's the simple, devastating reality that sometimes the people we love disappear, not because they leave, but because they become someone who can't remember us anymore. Adventure Time took that truth and hid it inside a silly cartoon villain. And by the time you realize what the show was really saying, it's already broken your heart. And there's something else about the Ice Crown that makes it even more disturbing when you think about it. The crown isn't just a random magical artifact. It has a history that stretches back millions of years. In the episode Evergreen from Season 6, the show reveals that the crown was originally created during the Cretaceous period by a being called Urgence Evergreen, one of the original elemental masters. Evergreen built the crown to stop a green catalyst comet, the same comet that would eventually become the Lich, from hitting Earth and wiping out all life, but the crown was never finished properly.
Evergreen's young apprentice, a dinosaur-like creature named Gunther, who adored and idolized Evergreen, ended up putting the crown on instead of Evergreen himself. And the crown doesn't grant your wish, it grants your deepest desire. Gunther's deepest desire wasn't to stop the comet, it was to be like Evergreen, so the crown turned him into a version of Evergreen, a cold, controlling figure with ice powers and a distorted personality. The crown has been doing this ever since. Everyone who wears it doesn't become what they want to be. They become a twisted reflection of Gunther's worship of Evergreen. That's why the Ice King looks the way he does, with the pointed nose and the long beard and the obsessive behavior. He's not turning into a random monster, he's turning into a version of a character from millions of years ago, filtered through the broken desire of a child who just wanted to be like his master.
Simon Petrikov was consumed by a wish that wasn't even his. He lost his mind and his identity because a prehistoric child loved his teacher too much, and that love got encoded into a magical artifact that would go on to ruin the life of every person who ever wore it. The crown is a tragedy machine that runs on devotion. That's not just horror, that's a Greek tragedy compressed into a cartoon prop. The crown also explains something about the Ice King that most people don't think about. The Ice King isn't just forgetful, he's literally running on someone else's operating system. His personality, his obsessions, his mannerisms, they're all echoes of Gunther trying to be Evergreen. When the Ice King kidnaps princesses, he's not acting on Simon's desires. He's acting on a corrupted version of Gunther's need for approval and companionship, filtered through millions of years of accumulated madness. Simon Petrikov is trapped inside a body that's being piloted by the ghost of a wish made by a dinosaur in the Cretaceous period. That's so many layers of tragedy stacked on top of each other that it almost becomes absurd, but Adventure Time plays it completely straight and makes it devastatingly sad. And think about what this means for the show's mythology as a whole. The crown, the Lich, the catalyst comets, they're all connected. The crown was built to stop the green comet. The green comet became the Lich. The Lich's entire existence is tied to the same cosmic forces that ruined Simon Petrikov's life. Finn's eternal enemy and Simon's curse come from the same source. Adventure Time built a world where everything is connected, where the same ancient forces keep causing suffering in different forms across millions of years, and where the characters living in the present are dealing with consequences of decisions made before their species even existed.
But Simon's story is a slow burn, something that unfolds over seasons and builds its horror through accumulation. Adventure Time also had episodes that didn't build to anything, episodes that came out of nowhere, started off feeling like a normal adventure, and then turned into something genuinely terrifying without any warning at all. And these standalone horror episodes are some of the most unsettling things the show ever produced. Let's start with the one that traumatized an entire generation of kids who were just trying to watch cartoons after school. No One Can Hear You, Season 3, Episode 15. This episode was so disturbing that it got censored in Australia, the United Kingdom, Spain, and Italy. 4 different countries looked at this 11-minute cartoon and said, no, we're not airing this for children. And once you know what happens in it, you'll understand why. It starts simply enough. Finn and Jake are in the Candy Kingdom when they encounter a deer that's been going around licking candy people. That's weird, but weird is normal in Adventure Time, so Finn tries to catch it. The deer charges at Finn, breaks both his legs, and knocks him unconscious. Already darker than you'd expect, but fine, Finn gets hurt sometimes. Then Finn wakes up. He's in a hospital bed in the Candy Kingdom. His legs are in casts. He's in a wheelchair, and the first thing he notices is that the entire kingdom is empty. Nobody is there, not a single candy person, not Princess Bubblegum, not anyone. He wheels himself through the streets calling out for Jake, for Bubblegum, for anyone at all, and gets nothing back but silence. The Candy Kingdom, which is normally full of life and noise and colour, is just a ghost town, and the show lets that silence sit there, uncomfortable and wrong, way longer than you'd expect a kid's cartoon to hold that kind of tension. Eventually, Finn finds Jake, and something is immediately off about him. Jake has a significant head wound, covered in bandages, and he's acting way too cheerful, way too enthusiastic. He tells Finn that all the candy people have gone off to plan a surprise birthday party for Jake. Lady Rainicorn is organising the whole thing, and they should all be back any day now. Finn goes along with this for a while, but then Jake lets slip that he's been waiting for this surprise party for 6 months. Finn has been unconscious for 6 months, and Jake has been here the entire time, alone, with a head injury, convinced that everyone is just planning a party. That's when Finn realizes that Jake has completely lost his mind. Something happened to Jake's brain, and now he's stuck in this delusion where everything is fine and the party is coming, and they just need to be patient. The tone of the episode shifts at this point from weird to genuinely unsettling. Jake starts getting aggressive when Finn tries to suggest that maybe the party isn't coming. Jake doesn't want to hear it. He wants to believe that everything is okay, and he's willing to get violent to protect that belief. There's a scene where Jake basically holds Finn hostage in the Candy Kingdom, refusing to let him leave because the party will start any minute now and they need to be there for it. Finn eventually discovers the truth. The deer from the beginning of the episode has been capturing the candy people. It's been licking them with a sticky orange adhesive and dragging them underground into the sewers, where it stuck them to the walls.
All the candy people are down there, trapped against the walls like insects on flypaper, unable to move or call for help. And then comes the moment that everyone remembers. The moment that got this episode censored in 4 countries. Finn confronts the deer in the sewers, and the deer reaches up and removes its hooves. Underneath the hooves are hands, human-like hands with long dexterous fingers. The deer was wearing its hooves like gloves the entire time, and underneath them it has these uncanny, wrong, human hands that make your brain scream, because a deer should not have those. Then the deer stands up on 2 legs. It drops to all 4s when it needs to run, but it can stand upright like a person. This creature that looked like a normal deer has been walking among the candy people in disguise, using its human hands to grab them and drag them underground. Even the show's lead character designer later admitted to being creeped out by the deer's design. Comicbook.com described the episode's atmosphere as rivaling the best horror movies. And they weren't exaggerating. No One Can Hear You works because it takes familiar, comforting elements, a best friend, a candy kingdom, a quirky animal, and makes all of them deeply wrong. Jake's madness is disturbing because it's so cheerful. The empty kingdom is disturbing because it should be full of life. And the deer is disturbing because it violates the basic rules of what you expect an animal to be. Everything in the episode is designed to make you feel like the world has tilted slightly off its axis, and you can't quite put it back. Then there's Blank-Eyed Girl from Season 7. This one isn't about body horror or violence. It's about the specific crawling dread of being watched by something you can't explain. Finn and Jake are at home when they tune into Starchy's late-night conspiracy radio show. Starchy is talking about sightings of strange girls with blank, featureless eyes who appear at people's homes and just stand there staring. Finn and Jake think it's funny. Starchy is always going on about conspiracy theories and weird sightings. They don't take it seriously at all. Then the Blank-Eyed Girls start showing up at their treehouse. At first it's just 1 or 2, standing outside in the dark, looking in through the windows. Finn tries every trick and superstition he can think of to make them go away. He tries being brave, he tries confrontation, he tries ignoring them. Nothing works. More and more of the girls appear, filling the yard, lining up around the house, all of them with those cold, expressionless black eyes fixed on Finn and Jake. Eventually, there are so many of them that they're inside the treehouse, standing in every room, crowding the hallways, surrounding Finn and Jake with silent, unblinking faces. Jake cracks under the pressure. He's terrified, and honestly, so would anyone be. Finn tries to hold it together and find a logical explanation for what's happening, but there isn't one. The Blank-Eyed Girls don't have motives. They don't have demands. They don't speak. They just appear and stare and refuse to go away. And then, in the final moments of the episode, the girls start coming apart. They pop off their eyes, they pop off their heads, they peel away their skin. And underneath, they're just formless, ethereal wisps. Wisps of light that float away into the night sky and disappear. They were never really girls at all. They were something else, something that has no name and no explanation.
Here's the thing that makes Blank-Eyed Girl genuinely scary. No in-universe explanation has ever been given for what the Blank-Eyed Girls actually are. In a show where almost everything has lore behind it, where almost every mystery eventually gets answered, the Blank-Eyed Girls remain completely unexplained. They showed up, they terrified everyone, they disintegrated, and no one ever figured out what they were or where they came from. That kind of ambiguity is rare in Adventure Time, and it's deeply unsettling because it means even in a world with magic and science and interdimensional travel, there are things that nobody understands, not even the show itself. King Worm from Season 4 goes after a different kind of fear entirely. Finn wakes up in what appears to be a normal day, but things are slightly wrong. Characters say things that don't make sense. Scenes don't connect properly. The rules of the world keep changing in small, subtle ways that you can feel are off, even if you can't pinpoint exactly how. That's because Finn is trapped in a dream. The King of Worms, a massive, grinning worm creature, has captured Finn and is holding him in a dream prison. The worm feeds on life energy, and as long as Finn stays asleep and doesn't realize he's dreaming, the worm can keep draining him. So the dream is designed to be just convincing enough that Finn won't question it, but just wrong enough that the audience can feel the seams. The episode plays on one of the most universal human fears, the fear that you might not be able to tell the difference between reality and a dream. Finn keeps trying to wake up, but every time he thinks he's escaped, he discovers he's still dreaming. The King of Worms adapts the dream to counter whatever Finn tries, creating an escalating sense of claustrophobia and helplessness. The creature doesn't need to chase Finn or fight him. It just needs to keep him comfortable enough to stay asleep. The Creeps from Season 3 takes a completely different approach by structuring the episode as a classic murder mystery. Finn, Jake, and several other characters are invited to a masquerade party at a creepy mansion by a mysterious host. One by one, the guests start dying, and Finn has to figure out who's responsible before everyone is killed. It's like Agatha Christie by way of Cartoon Network, and the episode leans hard into the tropes of classic horror: shadowy hallways, flickering lights, characters separating from the group even though they absolutely should not. But the real scare comes from an eyeless ghost woman who appears to Finn during the investigation.
She's a figure from the past who shouldn't exist in the present, and her appearance creates a sense of wrongness that lingers even after the episode's main mystery is resolved. Like the blank-eyed girls, she's a presence that the show never fully explains, and that ambiguity makes her stick in your memory long after the episode ends. And then there's A Glitch is a Glitch from Season 5, which might be the most visually disturbing episode of the entire series. Instead of the show's usual hand-drawn animation, this episode was rendered in a grotesque, uncanny 3D animation style that makes everything look slightly melted and wrong. The Ice King creates a computer virus that starts deleting everything in the world of O, and Finn and Jake have to enter the universal source code to stop it. Inside the code, Jake immediately creates a horrifying spider-snake hybrid creature that's straight out of a nightmare. There's a scene involving a viral video of a girl gagging herself with her own hair that's genuinely disturbing to watch. The whole episode has this queasy, uncomfortable aesthetic where nothing looks right and everything feels slightly contaminated. The animation style itself becomes the horror, because your brain knows something is wrong with what it's seeing, but can't quite categorize what. What makes all of these episodes so effective is that Adventure Time earned the right to scare you. The show spent hundreds of episodes being funny, charming, and emotionally intelligent, building a world you cared about and characters you loved, and then, without warning, it would suddenly become a horror show for 11 minutes. You'd be watching with your guard completely down, expecting another goofy adventure,
and then the deer would take off its hoofs and show you its hands. The contrast between what you expected and what you got made, the scares hit 10 times harder than they would have in a show that was always trying to be scary. There are a few more episodes that deserve mention here, because they each approach horror from a completely different angle, and together they show just how versatile Adventure Time was when it came to scaring the living daylights out of its audience. The first season already had hints of what was coming. In an episode called Slumber Party Panic, the very first official episode of the series, Princess Bubblegum creates a serum meant to bring dead candy people back to life. Instead, it turns them into zombies, actual sugar-hungry zombies that try to eat the living candy people.
Finn has to keep this a secret from the rest of the Candy Kingdom because, and this is a detail that tells you everything about how Adventure Time approaches horror, candy people literally explode when they get scared. Their bodies can't handle fear, so Finn is fighting off a zombie horde while simultaneously making sure nobody else finds out about it, because the knowledge alone would kill them. The very first episode of the series establishes that in the world of Ooh, fear itself is lethal. Then there's mortal recoil, the Season 2 finale that follows directly from the Lich's first major arc. After the Lich possesses Princess Bubblegum, the hospital scene where possessed PB slowly transforms is pure body horror. Her candy body warps and darkens and grows into something enormous and wrong while the doctors try to figure out what's happening. She breaks out of the hospital and rampages through the Candy Kingdom, and the image of this character we've come to love, this bright pink princess who represents intelligence and kindness, turned into a hulking, rotting monster that stuck with people. Watch Mojo ranked it among the darkest moments in the entire series, and they weren't wrong. Mortal Recoil showed that the Lich could corrupt anything, even the things you thought were safe. The show also did something fascinating with an episode called Puhoi from Season 5, where Finn falls through a portal in a pillow fort and ends up in a pillow dimension. He lives an entire life there. He grows up, falls in love, gets married, has children, grows old, and dies. An entire human lifespan compressed into one episode. And when he dies in the pillow world, he wakes up back in Oo as a kid again, with his pillow family gone and his memories of them already fading. Puhoi isn't a horror episode in the traditional sense. There are no monsters or jump scares, but it's deeply unsettling because it asks a question that has no good answer. If you lived an entire life, loved people, built a family, and then woke up and none of it was real, did it matter? Were those people real to you? Is the grief of losing them valid if they technically never existed? Finn walks around the treehouse after waking up, and you can see him trying to remember something that's already slipping away. An entire life, gone like a dream. The show understood that there are different kinds of scary. There's the visceral, gut-level fear of the deer's hands. There's the creeping dread of the blank-eyed girls. There's the existential unease of a dream that contained an entire lifetime. And there's the slow, aching sadness of watching someone forget who they are. Adventure Time deployed all of these at different times, sometimes in the same season, and each one left a mark on the audience that the bright colours and funny voices couldn't quite erase. But before we move on, subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying this deep dive. We cover animated lore like this every week, and trust me, there's a lot more we need to talk about. Because Adventure Time didn't just have standalone scary episodes, it also had entire storylines dedicated to sustained, prolonged horror. And the most disturbing of these storylines involves a kingdom ruled by a screaming lemon who eats his own clone alive. The Earl of Lemongrab is one of those characters that starts out seeming like a joke and slowly becomes something that keeps you up at night. He first appears as Princess Bubblegum's failed experiment, the first living being she ever created. She made him from candy and lemon juice and whatever else goes into building a sentient life form in a post-apocalyptic candy laboratory. And the result was Lemongrab, a shrieking, socially dysfunctional creature with no ability to understand other people's emotions and a pathological need to control everything around him. He's voiced by Justin Roiland, who co-created Rick and Morty. And Roiland brings this unhinged, piercing energy to the character, where every sentence sounds like it's being screamed through a megaphone by someone who has never had a conversation before. Lemongrab doesn't talk. He announces, he commands, he shrieks. His voice alone makes scenes uncomfortable, because it's the sound of someone who fundamentally does not understand how to exist around other living beings. Princess Bubblegum tries to fix Lemongrab's loneliness by creating a clone of him, Lemongrab 2. The idea is that if Lemongrab has someone exactly like him, maybe he won't be so angry and isolated all the time. She also gives him candy seeds so he can create his own citizens and build his own kingdom in his own castle. It's PB's attempt at being a good creator, giving her creation the tools to build a life and a community. And for a while, it seems to work. Lemongrab has a companion who understands him, subjects to rule, a purpose, but then things go wrong. And in the Lemongrab episodes, things always go wrong in ways that make your skin crawl. In Season 5, Episode 9, titled All Your Fault, Finn and Jake visit Castle Lemongrab because Lemongrab has been demanding more candy seeds from Princess Bubblegum. When they arrive, they discover why. Lemongrab used the seeds recklessly, creating dozens and dozens of new citizens without any thought to how they would be sustained or cared for. The castle is now filled with grotesque, malnourished lemon creatures in various stages of decay and deformity. These are sentient beings that Lemongrab brought into existence and then failed to provide for, and they're suffering visibly.
The Lemon Children are some of the most unsettling character designs the show ever produced. They're twisted, asymmetrical, some barely holding together. They scream and writhe and crawl through the dark hallways of Castle Lemongrab, like something out of a fever dream. Screen Rant specifically said that no Adventure Time episode captures body horror this well, and they were right. The visuals in All Your Fault make you feel physically uncomfortable because they're depicting the consequences of creation without responsibility. Lemongrab made these beings because he could, not because he should, and now they exist in constant suffering because their creator doesn't know how to take care of them. But the scariest moment in the episode belongs to a creature called Lemonhead. Finn and Jake are moving through the castle when they stumble into a room where a small, hunched-over lemon creature is crouching in the corner, making low, distressed sounds. It looks pitiful more than scary at first. Then it slowly turns its head toward the camera and begins peeling its own face off. Layer by layer, the lemon rind separates from its body, revealing something wet and raw underneath. It's such a visceral, unexpected moment of body horror that it feels like it belongs in a completely different show. But All Your Fault is just the beginning of the Lemongrab horror story. The real nightmare starts in Season 5, Episode 31, called Too Old. Finn returns to Castle Lemongrab and finds that the earldom has become a full-blown dictatorship. All of Lemongrab's citizens are now wearing shock collars that electrify them whenever they step out of line or disobey an order.
The lemon people are even more malnourished than before, cowering in corners, visibly terrified of their own creator. The castle has become a prison, and Lemongrab rules it through fear and pain. But that's not even the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part is what happened to Lemongrab 2. When Finn arrives, he discovers that the original Lemongrab has been eating his clone. Not metaphorically, literally eating him. Lemongrab has been consuming Lemongrab 2 piece by piece as punishment for disagreements between them. By the time we see Lemongrab 2 in Too Old, he's been partially devoured. Parts of him are missing, he's diminished, weak, and clearly in agony. And then, in the episode's most infamous moment, Lemongrab 2 pulls himself up out of Lemongrab's stomach. He drags himself up through Lemongrab's gullet, this half-eaten being clawing his way out of the body of his own clone, his own brother, just to scream a few last words before being swallowed whole again.
Screen Rant confirmed this scene aired on Cartoon Network. Actual on-screen cannibalism of a sentient being by its genetic twin in a show that was theoretically for children. This was set up by an earlier episode, another 5 more short Graybles from the same season. That episode features a segment where Lemongrab and Lemongrab 2 are playing with a shared child, a small doll called Lemon Sweets. They disagree about what to do with the doll, the argument escalates, and Lemon Sweets shatters on the floor. Lemongrab stares at the broken pieces, then he looks at Lemongrab 2, and without a word, the scene cuts as we hear the sounds of Lemongrab devouring his brother alive. The segment just ends there, abruptly, with no resolution, no explanation, just the implied violence of a creator consuming his equal because he couldn't handle disagreement. What makes the Lemongrab storyline so effective as horror is that it works on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it's body horror. The lemon people are grotesque, the cannibalism is visceral, and the visuals are designed to make you physically uncomfortable. But underneath that, it's political horror. Lemongrab's kingdom is a dictatorship where citizens are tortured for disobedience, where the ruler creates new subjects just to exploit them, where power is maintained through pain and fear. The shock collars, the malnourishment, the constant surveillance, it all maps onto real-world authoritarianism in a way that's surprisingly sophisticated for a cartoon. And underneath even that, there's an existential horror. Lemongrab never asked to exist. Princess Bubblegum created him, and she created him wrong. He lacks the emotional capacity to understand love, empathy, or cooperation.
He was brought into the world fundamentally broken, and every attempt to fix him, giving him a clone, giving him subjects, giving him resources, just made things worse because you can't fix something that was never built to work in the first place. Lemongrab is terrifying because he's not evil in the way the Lich is evil. The Lich is evil on purpose. He knows exactly what he is and what he wants. Lemongrab is evil because he was made that way and doesn't know how to be anything else. He hurts people because hurting is the only form of control he understands. He eats his brother because his brother disagreed with him, and he has no mechanism for processing disagreement other than destruction. He's the horror of a being that was created without the tools to exist alongside others, and the suffering that radiates outward from that failure. Princess Bubblegum's responsibility in all of this is something the show doesn't shy away from either. She made Lemongrab. She gave him the candy seeds that allowed him to create more suffering. She created Lemongrab too, without addressing the underlying problems that made the original Lemongrab dangerous. Every attempt to fix the situation was a band-aid over a fundamental design flaw, and the result was an entire kingdom of tortured beings ruled by a tyrant who was himself a victim of his own creator's failures. That's the thing about Adventure Time's horror that sets it apart from other shows. It doesn't let anyone off the hook. Even the heroes contribute to the darkness. Even the well-intentioned actions have consequences. Even the attempts to fix things make them worse. The show understands that horror doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from choices, and sometimes those choices are made by people who are trying to do the right thing. The Lemon Kingdom is Adventure Time's version of what happens when creation goes wrong on every possible level.
When the creator fails, when the creation suffers, when power fills the vacuum that love should have occupied, you get Lemongrab, a screaming, devouring, controlling nightmare wearing the shape of a lemon, ruling a kingdom of pain because he was never given the capacity to rule it any other way. And the scariest part is that no one in the show ever really fixes this. The Lemon Kingdom remains disturbing throughout the series, a wound in the fabric of ooh that never fully heals. The body horror and political horror of the Lemon Kingdom are contained though. They stay within Castle Lemongrab's walls, but Adventure Time also took its characters to places where the horror was limitless, where the rules of reality didn't apply, and where even the bravest heroes were completely out of their depth. The show sent Finn and Jake to actual hell, and it showed us what happened to Marceline across 1,000 years of undead existence.
Both of these storylines pushed the show's darkness into territory that felt genuinely dangerous. The Nightosphere is Adventure Time's version of hell, and unlike a lot of fictional underworlds that get sanitized for younger audiences, the Nightosphere actually feels like a place you would never want to go. It's a chaotic, Bosch painting come-to-life dimension filled with grotesque creatures that defy description, infinite landscapes of fire and suffering, and a bureaucracy so demoralizing that it might actually be worse than the demons. The place is ruled by Hunson Abadir, who holds the title of Lord of Evil and also happens to be Marceline's father. Hunson is one of those characters who could be terrifying if the show wanted him to be, but most of the time he's played as this oblivious, somewhat neglectful dad who doesn't understand why his daughter is angry at him. He ate Marceline's French fries once when she was a kid, and she literally wrote a song about it that became one of the show's most iconic musical moments. But underneath the comedy, Hunson Abadir is a genuinely dangerous being. He can suck the souls out of living creatures. He commands an army of demons, and his dimension is a place where suffering is the default state of existence. The Nightosphere episodes in Season 4, Return to the Nightosphere, and Daddy's Little Monster, are where the show really dives into what this dimension looks and feels like. Finn and Jake travel there to rescue Marceline from her father's demonic influence, and the moment they cross over, everything changes. The colours shift. The creatures around them are things that shouldn't exist. Twisted, asymmetrical beings with too many limbs and too many mouths. The landscape is hostile in ways that aren't just dangerous, but psychologically exhausting. Every corner of the Nightosphere seems designed to grind down your will to keep going, but the really scary moments in these episodes come from what happens to Finn and Jake themselves. Jake partially transforms into a demon during their time in the Nightosphere, and the result is a grotesque body horror sequence where his familiar, stretchy, golden dog body warps into something unrecognizable. His face distorts, his body twists. He becomes a creature that looks like it belongs in the Nightosphere, and for a moment you can see how easy it would be for the dimension to just absorb him entirely. Then Finn does something even worse. To survive and save Marceline, Finn fills himself with chaotic evil. He essentially lets the Nightosphere's energy flow through him, and the transformation is genuinely one of the scariest moments in the entire show. Finn, this kid who represents goodness and heroism and everything bright about Adventure Time, becomes something monstrous. His body contorts, his face changes, he radiates malice. The show takes its main character, the person the audience trusts the most, and turns him into a horror for a few awful minutes. And the fact that Finn chose to do this, that he corrupted himself on purpose to save someone he cares about, makes it even more unsettling, because it raises the question of how far goodness can go before it stops being good. But the Nightosphere is a place you can leave. You can cross back into Oo and shake off the darkness and go back to being yourself. Marceline's story is different because the darkness she carries isn't in another dimension. It's inside her. It has been for 1,000 years. Marceline the Vampire Queen is over 1,000 years old, and her backstory is basically a highlight reel of every worst thing that can happen to a person. She was born half human, half demon, the daughter of Hunson Abadir and a human woman named Elise. When the Mushroom War happened, Marceline was just a child. She and her mother wandered through the post-apocalyptic wasteland together, trying to survive in a world that had been destroyed by nuclear weapons. And then Elise got sick. The show heavily implies that she was suffering from radiation poisoning, the slow, agonizing kind that comes from living in a world saturated with nuclear fallout. Elise knew she was dying, and rather than let her daughter watch her die, she sent Marceline away to find a fallout shelter called the Clubhouse, a place where they'd been told they could be safe. Marceline made it to the shelter, she found it, and when she got there, the blast door was open and the skeletal remains of the shelter's inhabitants were inside. The shelter had failed. Everyone who had taken refuge there was dead. Marceline, a little girl alone in a nuclear wasteland, had just watched the last hope for safety turn out to be a tomb. After that, Marceline was on her own until Simon Petrikov found her. We've already talked about what happened between them, how Simon became her surrogate father and then lost his mind. After Simon was gone, Marceline was eventually taken in by her father, Hunson Abadir. But that relationship was strained from the start. Hunson doesn't understand human emotions. He's the Lord of Evil, he means well in his own alien way, but he's incapable of providing the kind of care a traumatized child actually needs. The relationship collapsed when he ate Marceline's fries, which sounds trivial, but was actually the final straw in a long pattern of Hunson failing to understand what mattered to his daughter. So by the time Marceline is a teenager, she's lost her mother to radiation, lost Simon to madness, and been abandoned by her father through emotional neglect. She's completely alone in a world full of mutant creatures and the ruins of human civilization, and that's when she became a vampire. The Stakes miniseries in Season 7, an 8-episode arc, reveals the full story. After the Mushroom War, some humans survived in small groups. One of these groups was protected by a young Marceline who had become a vampire hunter. She fought and killed vampires to keep the surviving humans safe, using her half-demon powers to take on creatures that would have overwhelmed anyone else. She was good at it. She became legendary among the survivors as someone who could stand between humanity and the things that wanted to feed on them. But when Marceline killed the Vampire King, she absorbed his essence. His vampiric power flowed into her and transformed her into the thing she had been fighting. Marceline, the protector of humans, became a vampire. The irony is brutal. She spent years hunting these creatures to keep people safe, and her reward was to become one of them. And the humans she had been protecting, they eventually sailed away. A leader named Two-Bread Tom gathered the surviving humans and put them on a renovated freighter, sailing off into the ocean to find a safer place to live. Marceline had sacrificed her humanity to protect these people, became the very thing she was fighting to save them from, and they left anyway. They didn't know what she'd given up. They couldn't have known. They just needed to survive, and survival meant leaving Oo behind. So Marceline was left alone on a mutant-infested continent, newly turned into a vampire, with the people she'd fought to protect disappearing over the horizon. That's the thing about Marceline that makes her story so crushing. Every sacrifice she makes costs her something irreplaceable, and the people she sacrifices for usually don't stick around long enough to appreciate it. Simon sacrificed his mind for her and forgot she existed. Marceline sacrificed her mortality for the humans, and they sailed away. She keeps giving up pieces of herself for people who leave, and she's been doing it for 1,000 years. The Stakes miniseries reintroduces several ancient vampires that Marceline had previously defeated, each one representing a different kind of fear. The Moon is a vampire who draws her power from moonlight and can force paralysis on her victims. leaving them fully conscious but unable to move while she feeds. That's a specific, horrible kind of horror, being aware of what's happening to you, but being completely unable to resist or fight back. Other vampires in the series represent overwhelming physical force, psychological manipulation, and predatory patience. The vampire who doesn't chase you, but simply waits because it knows you'll come to it eventually. There's a vampire in the Stakes arc called the Empress, who uses mind control and invisibility. She's the kind of predator who doesn't overpower you physically. She gets inside your head and makes you want to come to her. She feeds by making you believe that being fed upon is your own choice. That's a different kind of horror than a monster chasing you through a dark hallway. It's the horror of being manipulated so thoroughly that you walk toward your own destruction willingly, smiling the whole way. The Empress could make people see things that weren't there, could make them forget she was draining them dry. And Marceline had to fight this creature as a teenager, alone, without anyone to snap her out of it if the mind control took hold. The Hierophant is another one worth mentioning. This vampire represents traditional evil, the kind that comes with rules and rituals and a rigid sense of order. The Hierophant can't enter a home without being invited, can't cross running water, follows all the classic vampire weaknesses voluntarily because he believes in them. He's the horror of tradition taken to its extreme, a being so committed to a set of rules that the rules themselves become a cage. When Marceline fights him, she has to understand his rules to exploit them, and the episode becomes this tense chess match between two people who know the same playbook but are reading it from opposite sides. And then there's the Vampire King himself, the most complex of Marceline's enemies. The Vampire King isn't pure evil like the Lich. He's thoughtful, philosophical even. He understands what he is and what vampires represent, and he's almost tired of the whole arrangement. When Marceline finally confronts him in the Stakes arc, their conversation is less like a hero fighting a villain, and more like two old soldiers who have been fighting the same war for so long that neither of them really remembers what they're fighting for. The Vampire King represents the exhaustion of eternal conflict, the point where even the monster gets tired of being monstrous.
But the Stakes miniseries isn't just about vampires. It's about Marceline trying to cure herself, to undo the transformation that turned her into a vampire in the first place. Princess Bubblegum develops a process to extract the vampiric essences from Marceline's body, essentially removing the curse. But when the essences are extracted, they take physical form and become independent threats. The vampires Marceline killed centuries ago are now back, walking the earth again, and Marceline has to fight them all over again, this time without her vampire powers. Think about what that means. Marceline's trauma isn't something she can just remove and throw away. When she tries to extract the darkness from herself, it comes alive and terrorizes everyone around her. Her pain, her history, the sacrifices she made, they all have weight and consequence. You can't just pull 1,000 years of suffering out of someone and expect it to disappear quietly. It fights back, it takes shape.
It hurts the people you love. That's a remarkably sophisticated thing for an animated show to say about trauma. Your demons don't just go away because you want them to. They live inside you, and if you try to force them out, they might end up hurting the people you're trying to protect. Sometimes the only option is to live with the darkness, to accept it as part of who you are, and to keep going anyway. That's ultimately what Marceline does. She defeats the vampires again, absorbs them again, and accepts that being a vampire is part of who she is now. The curse becomes a choice, and the choice becomes strength. What makes the Stakes miniseries work as horror isn't just the vampires though. It's the weight of Marceline's entire history pressing down on everything. This is a character who has lived for over 1,000 years and watched everyone she ever cared about either die, forget her, or become something unrecognizable. Her mother died from radiation. Her surrogate father forgot she existed. Her biological father doesn't understand her. She's immortal, which means she'll keep watching people she loves disappear while she remains unchanged. Marceline's immortality is its own kind of horror. The show explores this in subtle ways throughout its run. She moves houses constantly because she can't stay in one place long enough to form attachments without those attachments becoming painful.
The Ice King keeps finding her, no matter where she goes, this broken echo of the person who used to love her, showing up at her door with no memory of why he's drawn to her. Every friendship Marceline forms has a countdown on it, because she will outlive everyone she meets. Everyone she knows will age and die, while she stays the same. There's a moment in the series where Marceline looks at Princess Bubblegum, who is also functionally immortal, and you can see something like relief in her expression. Bubblegum is the one person in Marceline's life who might actually be around long enough for the relationship to last. And even that relationship is complicated by centuries of misunderstandings, separations, and the kind of emotional baggage that accumulates when you've both been alive for longer than most civilizations.
Marceline's full story is essentially the horror of longevity without peace. She can't die, but she also can't fully live, because everything she builds will crumble while she's still standing in it. She's watched the world rebuild itself from nuclear ashes, and she knows that if something else destroys it, she'll probably survive that too.
She'll be standing in the ruins again, just like she was when she was a little girl, with no one left to hold her hand. Adventure Time never makes a big dramatic speech about this. It just lets you see it in the way Marceline moves through the world, always slightly detached, always a little sad underneath the punk rock attitude, always ready to leave before she gets too attached. And if you're really paying attention, you realize that the show's funniest, most rebellious character is also its loneliest. Marceline has been alone for 1,000 years, and the scariest thing about her story is that she might be alone for 1,000 more. But Adventure Time was always building towards something. All these threads, the Lich, Simon, the Mushroom War, GOLB, the cosmic cycle of destruction and renewal, they were all heading toward a conclusion. And the show's final season and its aftermath answered some of the biggest questions while introducing horrors that dwarfed everything that came before. Because it turns out that the Lich wasn't the top of the food chain. There was something above him, something that even death itself answered to. Now before we get into that, subscribe to our channel. We've still got a lot to cover, and if you've made it this far, you're definitely going to want to hear how this story ends. Throughout the entire run of Adventure Time, the Lich was the ceiling. He was the biggest, scariest, most dangerous thing in the universe, an ancient cosmic entity whose sole purpose was the extinction of all life. Voiced by Ron Perlman with this crushing, world-ending gravity that made you believe every word he said. And for 9 seasons, the Lich felt like the ultimate evil. Nothing could be worse than a being that wants to end everything. But then the show introduced something that made the Lich look small. GOLB is mentioned throughout the series in small, easily missed ways before becoming a central force in the finale. The Lich himself describes his relationship to GOLB when he calls himself the last scholar of GOLB. Think about what that means. The Lich, this cosmic entity of death and extinction, this thing that has existed since before the universe, and whose only goal is to end all life, considers himself a student, a follower, a scholar of something greater. Whatever GOLB is, the Lich looks up to it, and that should terrify you. GOLB is presented as the embodiment of chaos and disorder in the Adventure Time universe. If the Lich represents death, then GOLB represents something even more fundamental. Entropy, the slow, inevitable unraveling of all structure and meaning. Death at least has a purpose, an end goal, a final state.
GOLB doesn't even offer that. GOLB is the force that makes things fall apart for no reason at all. It's not trying to destroy life, it just makes destruction happen by existing, the way gravity makes things fall. The show doesn't give GOLB a voice or a personality the way it does with the Lich. GOLB doesn't have motivations or desires or plans. It's a massive, crimson, cube-headed entity that warps reality around it without any apparent intention. Things near GOLB dissolve back into primordial chaos. Structure breaks down, meaning unravels. GOLB doesn't attack you. It simply undoes whatever you are until you aren't anything anymore. And this is the thing that shows up in the series finale. Come along with me, the 2-part final episode of Adventure Time brings every major storyline to a head. There's a war brewing between Princess Bubblegum's forces and the armies of Uncle Gumbald, a conflict that threatens to tear Ooh apart. But the war becomes irrelevant almost immediately because GOLB manifests physically in the land of Ooh, and suddenly everything else stops mattering. When GOLB appears, the scale of the threat makes the Lich seem like a warm-up. GOLB's presence alone starts dissolving the fabric of reality. Characters who get too close begin to lose their form, reverting to simpler and simpler states until they're just raw material without consciousness or identity. It's not death, it's something worse than death. It's being unmade. Being reduced to nothing while still technically existing as matter, but without any of the organization that makes you a person.
The heroes try to fight GOLB using every tool they have. Magic, science, friendship, brute force, all the things that have carried them through 10 seasons of adventures, and none of it works. You can't fight entropy. You can't punch the concept of disorder in the face. Every attack they launch gets absorbed or dissolved. Every strategy fails. For the first time in the entire series, it genuinely feels like there is no way to win.
And that's when Betty Groff makes her choice. Betty has been a recurring presence throughout the later seasons of Adventure Time. She's Simon Petrikov's fiancée, the woman who left him when the crown started changing him, the woman who then spent centuries trying to find a way back to him. In various episodes, Betty discovers time travel, interdimensional magic, and reality warping power, all in service of one goal: saving Simon from the crown. Betty's journey through the show is actually one of the most quietly terrifying arcs in the entire series, because you watch her make the same mistake Simon made, just in a different direction. Simon's mistake was putting on the crown and not being able to take it off. Betty's mistake was deciding to save Simon at any cost and not being able to stop. She starts out rational, a scientist who approaches the problem of the crown with logic and research, but the longer she works on it, the more desperate she becomes. She starts experimenting with magic she doesn't fully understand. She makes deals with entities she shouldn't trust. She manipulates friends and allies. She becomes obsessed. There's an episode called Betty from Season 5 where Simon briefly regains his sanity after the crown's magic is temporarily neutralized. For a few precious minutes, Simon Petrikov is himself again. He remembers Betty, he remembers his life, he can think clearly and speak coherently. But the crown's magic is also what's keeping him alive, and without it, he starts dying.
Betty appears through a time portal, sees Simon dying, and makes a split-second decision to restore the crown's magic, saving his life but condemning him to return to being the Ice King. She saves the body and loses the mind, and she has to watch it happen in real time. That moment breaks something in Betty. From that point forward, she becomes increasingly reckless and unstable in her pursuit of a cure. She acquires the Magic Man's power, becoming Magic Woman, and starts using magic in ways that are dangerous and unpredictable. She's not a villain exactly, but she's not a hero either. She's something more complicated, a person so consumed by love that the love itself becomes destructive. She's willing to burn down the world if it means getting Simon back, and the show never quite tells you whether that's noble or insane. Probably both. Betty's story is heartbreaking because it mirrors Simon's in reverse. Simon lost his mind trying to protect the people he loved. Betty lost her humanity trying to save the person she loved. Both of them were consumed by the thing they relied on. For Simon, it was the crown. For Betty, it was her obsession with fixing what the crown had done. They're two sides of the same tragedy, and neither of them ever found a way to break the cycle. Until the finale. When GOLB appears and all seems lost, Betty makes the ultimate sacrifice. She uses the power she's accumulated across multiple seasons, power that has been slowly transforming her into something less and less human, and she merges herself with GOLB, becoming one with the cosmic entity. In doing so, she doesn't destroy GOLB. Nobody can destroy entropy. But she changes it. She redirects it. She becomes part of the force that was destroying everything and uses that position to pull GOLB away from Oo, removing the immediate threat. The moment of merging is visually stunning and deeply disturbing. Betty doesn't just touch GOLB and disappear. She is consumed, absorbed, integrated into something so vast that the concept of Betty as an individual person ceases to have meaning. She isn't dead, she's something worse than dead. She's dissolved into a cosmic force, her consciousness spread across an entity that has no interest in individual identity. Imagine being awake inside a hurricane, aware but formless, present but unable to act. That might be what Betty is experiencing for eternity, or maybe the merging erased her awareness entirely. The show never tells us, and that ambiguity makes it worse. The consequences are immediate and permanent. Betty is gone, not dead in the traditional sense, but absorbed into something so vast and alien that the Betty who existed before effectively ceases to be. She becomes part of GOLB forever, a human consciousness merged with primordial chaos, sacrificing her individual existence to save the world her lover lived in. And the thing Betty's sacrifice accomplishes, the thing she traded herself for, is Simon's freedom. When Betty merges with GOLB, the magical balance shifts enough to break the crown's hold on Simon Petrikov. After more than 1,000 years of imprisonment inside his own mind, after a millennium of being the Ice King, Simon wakes up. He's himself again. He remembers who he is. He remembers Marceline. He remembers Betty. And Betty is gone. Simon gets his mind back and immediately learns that the woman who spent a lifetime trying to save him succeeded, but at a cost that makes the victory feel like another loss. He's free, but he's alone. The person he loved most in the world destroyed herself so he could be himself again, and he will never be able to thank her, or hold her, or tell her that it worked. Simon Petrikov spent 1,000 years as a prisoner, and when he finally broke free, the first thing he discovered was that freedom has a price that someone else already paid. This is what Adventure Time did with its finale. It didn't give us a clean victory. It gave us a trade. One person's freedom for another person's existence. One curse lifted, another created. The show refused to pretend that love conquers all without cost, and that refusal is what makes the ending so devastating and so honest. But the show wasn't done exploring the implications of mortality and loss. The Distant Lands specials, produced after the main series ended, pushed even further into territory that most animated shows would never touch. Together Again, the third Distant Lands special, directly confronts the deaths of Finn and Jake. Not metaphorical deaths, not symbolic deaths, the actual, literal deaths of the show's two main characters. The special opens in the afterlife. Finn has died and he's navigating a series of dead worlds, different dimensions of the afterlife that handle different kinds of death. Some are peaceful, some are terrifying. All of them are disorienting because the rules of the living world no longer apply. Finn is dead and he's looking for Jake, who died before him. Think about that for a moment. This is a show that started with a 12-year-old boy going on adventures with his magical dog. It ran for 10 seasons on a children's network. And its follow-up special opens with the main character, dead, walking through the afterlife, trying to find his dead best friend. The tonal courage of that decision is staggering. The dead worlds, in Together Again, are designed with the same creativity that characterized the rest of Adventure Time, but with a layer of melancholy that colors everything. Finn encounters beings and landscapes that are beautiful and horrible in equal measure. Death in the Adventure Time universe isn't just blackness or clouds or pearly gates. It's a complex, multi-layered system with its own politics, its own hierarchies, and its own dangers. Even after you die, there are things that can hurt you.
An alternate version of the Lich appears in the afterlife, proving that Death's agent exists even beyond life itself. The Lich is there, in the realm of the dead, still doing what he does, still trying to end things, still pursuing extinction. The implication is chilling. Death doesn't stop the Lich because the Lich is death. He's not a creature that can be killed. He's a force that operates in every state of existence, including the afterlife. Finn eventually finds Jake, and their reunion is everything fans hoped it would be. Two best friends, separated by death, finding each other again in whatever comes next.
But the special doesn't pretend that this reunion erases the grief. Jake died, Finn died, their friends and family had to go on without them. The treehouse is empty, the adventures are over. Together Again acknowledges that death is permanent and painful and real, even in a world with magic and vampires and candy kingdoms. The special ends with Finn and Jake choosing to be reincarnated together, starting a new cycle of life in new forms. It's a hopeful ending in a way, suggesting that the bond between them transcends any single lifetime. But it's also a reminder that the Finn and Jake we spent 10 seasons with are gone. Those specific people, with those specific memories and relationships and experiences, don't exist anymore. New versions will carry echoes of who they were, but the originals have moved on to whatever comes after the afterlife. Adventure Time had the courage to kill its main characters and show us what that means. Not just for Finn and Jake, but for everyone who loved them. The show took mortality seriously in a way that almost no animated series ever has, and it trusted its audience to handle the emotional weight of that decision. What makes Together Again even more remarkable is how it handles the concept of the afterlife, without turning it into something simple or comforting. There's no single heaven or hell in Adventure Time's cosmology. Instead, there are dozens of dead worlds, each one a different flavor of afterlife, overseen by different incarnations of death. Some dead worlds are pleasant, calm places where souls rest peacefully. Others are terrifying, chaotic dimensions where the dead are subjected to weird and cruel conditions for eternity. The afterlife in Adventure Time isn't a reward or a punishment, it's a continuation, just as messy and complicated and uncertain as life itself.
Finn navigates through multiple dead worlds looking for Jake, and each one he passes through changes the way you think about what comes after. One dead world is nothing but endless staircases leading nowhere. Another is a frozen landscape of total silence. The variety of these afterlives suggests that death isn't a single experience, but an infinite range of possibilities, and you don't get to choose which one you end up in. That randomness, the idea that your eternal fate might just be a cosmic lottery, is deeply unsettling. You can live the most heroic life imaginable and still end up in a dead world that looks like a cosmic joke. The special also forces you to confront the fact that Jake died first, and Finn spent the remainder of his life without his best friend. We don't see much of Finn's life after Jake's death, but the implication is heavy. Finn, who defined himself through partnership and adventure, had to learn to exist without the person who made those things possible. He had to grow old alone, or at least without Jake, and that quiet tragedy sits underneath the entire special like a weight. But maybe the most haunting moment in the entire franchise isn't a death scene or a villain reveal or a cosmic horror. It's the final shot of the series. The main series finale, Come Along With Me, ends with a time skip montage that shows the far, far future of Ooh. We see centuries passing, kingdoms rise and fall, landscapes change. Characters we've known for 10 seasons age and die and are replaced by new characters who build new lives on top of the old ones. And then we see Lemonhope. Remember him?
He's a lemon child from Castle Lemongrab who was freed in an earlier episode and told to come back someday. In the finale's time skip, we see Lemonhope as an old man wandering through the ruins of the Candy Kingdom and Castle Lemongrab. Both kingdoms are abandoned. Both are crumbling. The places that were the center of so much drama and conflict and life throughout the series are just empty buildings now, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Lemonhope walks through these ruins alone, finds his old bedroom in Castle Lemongrab, lies down on his bed, and closes his eyes. It's implied that he dies there, the last resident of a kingdom that no longer exists, returning to sleep in the place where he was created. That image, a lone figure in the ruins of everything we watched for 10 seasons, is the show's final statement on time and impermanence. Everything ends, the Candy Kingdom ends, Castle Lemongrab ends. The Ice Kingdom, presumably, ends too.
All the conflicts and relationships and adventures that we invested hundreds of hours in eventually fade into silence and ruins. But the very last scene shows something else. A massive tree, grown from a seedling left by a character named Fern, now towers over the landscape, and two new characters, adventurers named Beth and Shermie, find the Finn sword embedded in the tree. They take it, they look out at a new world, a world built on the ruins of the old one, and the cycle starts again. Adventure Time's message is that everything ends, but new things begin in the places where old things fell. The Mushroom War ended human civilization, but gave rise to Ooh. The Ice King consumed Simon Petrikov, but was eventually undone by love. The Lich tried to extinguish all life, but life kept finding ways to persist. Even GOLB, the embodiment of entropy itself, couldn't permanently destroy everything, because destruction creates the conditions for something new. That's the real horror hiding underneath Adventure Time's candy-coated surface. Not just that bad things happen, but that the cycle of creation and destruction never stops. New civilizations will rise on the bones of old ones. New heroes will find old swords. New villains will emerge from the same cosmic forces that created the old ones. And 1,000 years from now, new characters will walk through the ruins of Beth and Shermie's world the same way Lemonhope walked through the ruins of ours. The show's creator, Pendleton Ward, built a world where the apocalypse already happened and everyone moved on. But the finale shows us that moving on doesn't mean it won't happen again. The Mushroom War was just one cycle. GOLB was just one manifestation of chaos. The Lich was just one incarnation of death. These forces are eternal. They'll keep coming back in different forms, wearing different faces, threatening different kingdoms, and someone, maybe someone as brave as Finn, will have to stand against them. Or maybe they won't. Maybe the next time, nobody will be there to stop it, and the cycle will end not with a new beginning, but with the silence that the Lich always wanted.
That's the thought Adventure Time leaves you with. Not despair exactly, but the uncomfortable acknowledgement that survival isn't guaranteed, that everything beautiful is also temporary, that the Candy Kingdom is built on nuclear waste, and the heroes don't live forever, and the villains can't be permanently defeated. The show looked at the fundamental nature of existence and said, yeah, it's scary, but it's also kind of wonderful, and the scary part and the wonderful part are the same thing.
Now let's dig into the final layer of all this, because there are episodes we haven't talked about yet that tie everything together in ways you might not expect. And once you see how the show connected its smallest, strangest moments to its biggest, darkest revelations, you'll understand why Adventure Time is the kind of show that people are still picking apart years after it ended. In Season 5, there's an episode called The Vault that changes the way you think about Finn as a character. Up until this point, Finn is just a kid. A brave, good-hearted kid who fights monsters and goes on adventures and tries to do the right thing. He's the hero of the show, simple. But The Vault reveals that Finn has past lives. He has been reincarnated multiple times across the history of Ooo, and one of those past lives was a woman named Shoko. This isn't a throwaway detail or a one-off gag. It's a major piece of the show's mythology that connects Finn to the founding of the Candy Kingdom and to some of the darkest secrets buried underneath it. Shoko lived in the early days of Ooo, not long after the Mushroom War. She was a thief, missing an arm, tough and pragmatic in the way that survivors of apocalypses tend to be. She was hired to steal an amulet from the newly established Candy Kingdom, which at that point was just a small settlement being built by a young Princess Bubblegum. Shoko infiltrated the settlement by befriending Bubblegum, which makes the whole thing feel like a betrayal story from the start.
But what Shoko discovered while working undercover is what makes this episode connect to everything we've been talking about. She found the irradiated river, the one running directly underneath the site where Princess Bubblegum was building her castle. The water was toxic, glowing with nuclear contamination left over from the Mushroom War. Bubblegum asked Shoko to help cover it up, to literally pave over the radioactive river so the Candy Kingdom could be built on top of it. Shoko helped. She covered the river. She helped build the foundation of the Candy Kingdom on toxic, contaminated ground. And then, while trying to complete her original mission of stealing the amulet, Shoko fell into that same radioactive river and died. Her body was consumed by the toxic water, and she died alone in the poison beneath the kingdom she helped build. The horror of The Vault isn't jump scares or monsters.
It's the revelation that the Candy Kingdom, this place we've been watching for 5 seasons, this bright, happy, colourful place full of singing and dancing and celebration, was literally built on top of a mass grave. The radioactive river isn't just contamination, it's a graveyard. Shoko died in it, and who knows how many others did too. Every episode we've ever watched that takes place in the Candy Kingdom takes place above that river, above those bones, above that poison. The Candy people live their cheerful lives directly above the thing that killed their kingdom's co-founder. And Shoko's ghost has been haunting Finn. She's been locked in what the show calls the Vault, a part of Finn's subconscious where he keeps memories and experiences too traumatic to process. Finn has been carrying the weight of his own past death inside his mind without knowing it, and the Vault has been pressing against his consciousness, trying to get out, trying to make him remember what happened to a version of himself that died 1,000 years ago in poisoned water. This connects to something even larger. In Season 6, Episode 43, an episode simply called The Comet, the show drops its biggest piece of cosmic lore. The Purple Comet, a celestial entity that appears to Finn, explains the fundamental nature of good and evil in the Adventure Time universe. Catalyst comets have been visiting Earth throughout its entire history,
and they embody opposing forces. Some comets carry the essence of creation and heroism. Others carry destruction and annihilation. Finn's soul is tied to the blue Catalyst Comet. This means that across billions of years, Finn has been reincarnated in different forms, always embodying good, always standing against evil, always fighting the same fight in different bodies with different names. Shoko was one of his incarnations. A butterfly in a previous age was another. Finn the human is just the latest version of a soul that has been doing this forever. And the Lich's soul is tied to the green Catalyst Comet. The Lich has also been doing this forever. Across billions of years through countless forms and incarnations, The Lich has been pursuing the extinction of all life, while Finn, in various forms, has been trying to stop him. They're not just hero and villain.
They're cosmic opposites, locked in a cycle that predates not just humanity, but the current universe itself. Think about what that means for every adventure Finn has ever been on. Every time he fights evil, every time he stands up for someone weaker, every time he risks his life to protect U, he's not just being a brave kid. He's fulfilling a cosmic role that has been assigned to his soul since before time began. And the Lich isn't just a bad guy with a skull face.
He's the eternal counterpart to everything Finn represents, the dark answer to every bright thing Finn has ever done. The show even suggests that this cycle might be inescapable. The purple comet offers Finn the chance to transcend, to leave behind his physical form and become something beyond the cycle of reincarnation and conflict. Finn turns it down because he wants to keep being a person, keep having adventures, keep living in the messy, complicated, beautiful world he knows. But the offer itself implies that the only way out of the cycle is to stop being human. As long as Finn exists in physical form, he'll keep being drawn into the eternal conflict with forces like the Lich. He chose to stay, which is heroic and admirable, but it also means he chose to keep fighting a war that will never end, and the Lich made the same choice in the opposite direction. The Lich could theoretically be redeemed, transformed, or transcended the same way the purple comet offered Finn transcendence. But the Lich chose to remain the Lich. He chose annihilation, he chose the silence. And as long as both of them keep choosing, the cycle continues. This cosmic framework casts every single episode of Adventure Time in a different light. The show isn't just telling stories about a boy and his dog, it's showing us one tiny chapter in an infinite book, one brief incarnation of an eternal struggle. And the characters don't know this for most of the series. Finn doesn't know he's a cosmic avatar of good until late in the show. The Lich doesn't seem to care about the philosophical implications of his existence.
They're just doing what they've always done, fighting, struggling, surviving, without understanding the full scope of what they're part of. That lack of awareness is its own kind of horror. Imagine finding out that your entire life, everything you've done and everyone you've loved, is just one iteration of a pattern that has been repeating since before the universe existed. That you're not unique, that you're a cycle, that the villains you defeated will come back in new forms, and the victories you won will eventually be undone by the same forces wearing different faces. Adventure Time asks whether heroism still means something if it's cosmically predetermined, and the show's answer is yes, but it's a yes that comes with a weight that never fully lifts. There's another episode that explores the horror of cycles in a completely different way. The Food Chain from Season 6 was written and directed by Masaki Yuasa, a Japanese animator known for his surreal, unsettling visual style. In it, the Magic Man transforms Finn and Jake through every stage of the biological food chain. They become birds, then caterpillars, then bacteria, then back to their normal forms, experiencing what it feels like to eat and be eaten at every level of the natural world. The episode is animated in a style completely different from the rest of the series, all flowing lines and vivid colours that look beautiful and deeply wrong at the same time. Finn experiences being consumed alive. He feels what it's like to decompose. He exists as bacteria, feeding on dead organic matter, part of the invisible machinery that recycles death into new life.
The whole thing is set to upbeat, almost cheerful music, which creates this nauseating contrast between what you're hearing and what you're seeing. The food chain is horrifying because it strips away all the comforting stories we tell ourselves about the natural world and forces you to confront the reality that life is a process of eating and being eaten, of growing and decaying, of being assembled from dead matter and eventually returning to it. Finn goes through this entire cycle in 11 minutes and comes out the other side fundamentally changed. Because once you've experienced decomposition from the inside, you can't really pretend that death is abstract anymore. And in a show that's set 1,000 years after a nuclear apocalypse, the food chain takes on an even darker meaning. The cycle of life in U was kickstarted by mass death. The mutations that created every living thing in the show came from radiation poisoning and nuclear fallout. The food chain that Finn experiences isn't a natural, pristine cycle.
It's a cycle that began in poison and catastrophe. Every meal eaten in U, every plant that grows, every animal that breeds, it all traces back to the moment a nuclear bomb went off and turned a normal planet into a mutant wonderland. The show also uses the elementals to explore the cyclical nature of horror in OO. Throughout Adventure Time, there are 4 elemental forces: ice, fire, candy, and slime. Each element has a champion, and these champions are reincarnated throughout history, just like Finn and the Lich. Patience, St. Pim, the ice elemental, froze herself beneath the sea before the mushroom bomb dropped and survived in suspended animation for 1,000 years. When she wakes up in the present timeline, she's obsessed with unleashing the full magical potential of all 4 elementals. Patience Street. Pim is a fascinating character because she represents the horror of someone who slept through the apocalypse and woke up in a world she doesn't recognize or respect. She froze herself before the mushroom bomb fell, which means she missed everything. She missed the war, the radiation, the mutation of the planet, the rise of new civilizations, all of it. When she thaws out 1,000 years later, she sees OO not as a miracle of survival, but as a diluted, imperfect version of the elemental purity she remembers from before the war. Her response isn't to adapt, it's to force the world back to what she thinks it should be. This leads to one of the show's most surreal and disturbing arcs, where Patient Street Pim triggers a mega elemental spell that transforms all of OO. The entire land gets divided into elemental zones, and every person in OO is transformed against their will. Candy people become more candy, losing their individuality and merging into a saccharine hive mind. Fire people become mindless agents of destruction. Ice spreads uncontrollably, freezing everything in its path. Slime consumes and absorbs. The individuality of every character in the show is overwritten by raw elemental force, and they lose their personalities, their memories, and their free will in the process. What makes the elemental arc so scary is how it parallels the Mushroom War. Both events involve a force being unleashed that transforms the entire population against their will. The mushroom bomb turned humans into mutants. The elemental spell turns individuals into extensions of primal forces. In both cases, the people affected had no say in what was happening to them. Their bodies, their minds, their identities were rewritten by something they couldn't fight or understand. Princess Bubblegum, who is normally the smartest and most prepared person in any room, gets absorbed into the candy element and becomes a towering, mindless deity of sweetness. She's happy in this state, grinning and spreading candy everywhere, but the happiness is hollow because it's not hers. It's the candy element expressing itself through her body. The real Princess Bubblegum, the scientist, the ruler, the person, is gone, replaced by a force wearing her shape. That image of a beloved character smiling vacantly while their real self has been erased is one of the most quietly horrifying things the show ever did. The elemental arc is resolved when Lumpy Space Princess, of all characters, uses the anti-elemental power of her lumps to revert everyone back to their true shape. It's a funny solution delivered by a funny character, and it works, but the arc leaves behind the uncomfortable knowledge that OO is vulnerable to this kind of total transformation. It happened during the Mushroom War, and it happened again during the Elemental Crisis. The land heals both times, but the people who lived through it carry the memory of having their identities erased. How do you trust reality when you've seen it be rewritten twice? This leads to one of the show's most surreal and disturbing arcs, where Patient Street Pim triggers a mega elemental spell that transforms all of OO. The entire land gets divided into elemental zones, and every person in OO is transformed against their will. Candy people become more candy, fire people become more fire, ice becomes everything. The individuality of every character in the show is overwritten by raw elemental force, and they lose their personalities, their memories, and their free will in the process. It's essentially a second apocalypse within the show. The first one was nuclear, the second one is magical, and the characters who manage to resist the elemental transformation have to watch their friends and loved ones get consumed by forces they can't control, turned into mindless extensions of primal magic. It's the Mushroom War happening again, just with a different weapon. The cycle of mass transformation, of civilizations being unmade and remade against the will of the people living in them, is something that Adventure Time shows happening multiple times throughout its run. OO is a world where apocalypses are recurring events, and the people who live there have to rebuild every time, knowing that it could happen again. This connects to something the show does that I think is really remarkable
and really unsettling when you think about it carefully. Adventure Time operates on timescales that most shows can't even conceptualize. The Mushroom War happened 1,000 years before the show. The Catalyst comets have been cycling for billions of years. The Lich existed before time. Simon Petrikov has been the Ice King for over a millennium. Marceline has been alive for over 1,000 years. Princess Bubblegum has been building and rebuilding her kingdom for 8 centuries. These aren't just big numbers thrown around for dramatic effect. The show actually reckons with what those timescales mean for the characters living through them. When Marceline looks tired, she's not just having a bad day, she's carrying 1,000 years of loss. When Princess Bubblegum seems controlling, it's because she's been keeping a kingdom alive for longer than most civilizations last, and she knows exactly how fragile everything is. When Simon finally wakes up from 1,000 years as the Ice King, the world has moved on so completely that nothing he remembers exists anymore. The horror of time in Adventure Time is that it keeps going regardless of how you feel about it. Characters die and the world continues. Kingdoms fall and new ones grow from the wreckage. The Ice King forgets everything and nobody can stop it. The Lich keeps coming back and nobody can prevent it. Time is the one force in the show that nobody can defeat. Not Finn, not Bubblegum, not even the Lich. Everything is subject to its passage, and the show never lets you forget that. And within that vast time scale, the show hides small, personal horrors that hit harder than any cosmic threat. Like the detail about Simon singing the Cheers theme song.
It's a tiny moment, a man humming a TV jingle while fighting monsters in a nuclear wasteland. But it tells you that Simon Petrikov was a regular person who watched sitcoms and ate dinner and went to work and had a normal life, and all of that was taken away from him by a crown and a war and the merciless passage of time. The Cheers theme is about a place where everybody knows your name. Simon sang it while losing the ability to remember his own. Or the detail about Hambo, the teddy bear. Simon found it in the ruins of a toy store that looks like a destroyed Toys R Us. He gave it to a crying child in the middle of an apocalypse. That child kept the teddy bear for centuries, and it became the most important object in her life, not because of what it was,
but because of who gave it to her and what he represented. And the person who gave it to her eventually forgot he ever did it. He forgot her. He forgot himself. And the teddy bear became the only physical proof that Simon Petrikov had once been a good man who found a little girl crying in the ruins and decided to help her. These small details are what make Adventure Time's horror so effective. The show understands that the scariest thing in the world isn't a monster with a skull face, or a nuclear bomb, or an ancient cosmic entity. The scariest thing is the gap between who someone was and who they became. The distance between a toy store and a ruins. The difference between remembering and forgetting. The quiet, relentless way that time turns everything you love into something you used to love. I want to talk about one more thing before we wrap up, because I think it ties together everything we've covered.
Adventure Time has a character called Ricardio, who appears in Season 1 and returns in Season 5. Ricardio is the Ice King's heart, literally, his actual physical heart, which escaped from his chest and became an independent being. Ricardio has a human-like face that sits in the uncanny valley, almost normal, but disturbingly off, and he's voiced by George Takei with this smooth, charming voice that makes him feel like a predator wearing a mask of civility. Ricardio's goal is to capture Princess Bubblegum's heart. Again, literally. He wants to physically remove her heart and combine it with himself. It's a grotesque, body horror take on the concept of love and desire, and it's deeply unsettling because Ricardio looks and sounds just human enough to pass as normal before you realize what he actually wants. But here's why Ricardio matters in the context of everything else we've discussed. Ricardio is the Ice King's heart, he's the emotional core of Simon Petrikov, separated from the rest of him and given independent existence. And what does that emotional core do when it's free? It obsesses, it possesses, it tries to take things by force that should only be given willingly. Ricardio is what Simon's love looks like when it's been corrupted by the crown, when the warmth and kindness that defined Simon gets twisted into something predatory and controlling. That's the show doing what it does best. Taking a concept that seems silly on the surface, a heart that escapes from a chest and tries to steal another heart, and layering genuine psychological horror underneath it. Ricardio isn't just a funny monster of the week. He's the physical manifestation of what the crown did to Simon's capacity for love. He's proof that even the best parts of a person can become dangerous when they're separated from context and conscience. Adventure Time is full of moments like this. Moments where something that looks like a joke is actually a commentary on loss, or identity, or the nature of evil. The show built its horror not through cheap scares, but through slow, careful accumulation of detail, layering meaning on top of meaning, until the full picture emerged and you realized that the candy-colored world you'd been watching was actually a meditation on death, time, memory, and the stubborn persistence of life in the face of everything that wants to destroy it. That's why the show hits different when you're older.
When you're a kid watching Adventure Time, you see the bright colours and the funny voices and the exciting adventures. You laugh at the Ice King and cheer for Finn and maybe get a little scared during the deer episode. But when you come back to it as an adult, you see the nuclear wasteland under the candy. You hear the dementia in the Ice King's voice. You understand what it means for Marceline to watch everyone she loves die while she stays the same. You feel the weight of 1,000 years pressing down on every frame. And the thing that really gets me is that the show was designed this way on purpose. Pendleton Ward wanted the horror to be invisible to kids and visible to adults. He wanted the post-apocalyptic elements to sit in the background, in the buried cars and the scattered bones, waiting for viewers to grow up and see them.
Adventure Time is a show that becomes darker as you age, because aging is what allows you to understand what you're looking at. The horror was always there, you just had to live long enough to recognize it. Before you die, there were monsters. That's what the Lich says. Before the universe, before time, before anything that could be destroyed, there were already things that wanted to destroy. The show starts with that premise and builds 10 seasons on top of it. 10 seasons of a boy and his dog trying to do good in a world that was broken before they were born, in a cycle that was turning before they existed, against forces that will outlast everything they build. And somehow, despite all of that, the show is hopeful. Finn keeps fighting even though the fight is endless. Marceline keeps loving even though everyone she loves will leave. Simon comes back even though 1,000 years were taken from him. Princess Bubblegum keeps building her kingdom even though she knows it will crumble someday. Jake keeps being loyal and funny and kind even though the universe gives him no reason to be. That's the final trick of Adventure Time. It shows you all the horror, all the darkness, all the weight of cosmic inevitability, a nuclear holocaust, and the slow erasure of memory, and then it shows you a kid getting up in the morning, grabbing his sword, and going on an adventure anyway. The horror is real. The darkness is real. But so is the choice to keep going. And I think that's why these episodes stick with you. Not just because they're scary, although they absolutely are, but because they earn their scares through honesty. Adventure Time never lies to you about the world it's built. It shows you the nuclear waste under the Candy Kingdom and the dementia inside the Ice Wizard and the extinction event wearing a skull face.
And then it shows you the people who live in that world anyway, who find joy and friendship and love and meaning in a place that was built on death. The scary episodes work because they're true. Not literally true, obviously. We don't have magical dogs or candy kingdoms. But emotionally true. The fear of losing your mind, the grief of watching someone you love disappear, the existential dread of knowing that everything ends, the loneliness of being the last of your kind. These aren't cartoon fears. These are the fears that keep you awake at 3 a.m, the ones that no amount of logic or bravery can fully resolve. Adventure Time took those fears and put them in a show with bright colours and silly voices, and somehow that made them more affecting, not less. Because when you're watching Marceline cry, while the Ice King obliviously plays drums, you're not just watching a cartoon. You're watching someone grieve for a person who is still alive but already gone.
And that's not something you forget. The show ran for 10 seasons and told stories that spanned billions of years. It started as a goofy cartoon about a boy and his dog, and ended as a sprawling epic about love, death, time, and the fundamental nature of existence. Along the way, it produced some of the most genuinely frightening episodes ever aired on a children's network. Episodes that earned their horror through character, through lore, through the slow, patient accumulation of truth after uncomfortable truth. The land of Ooo is beautiful. It's vibrant and magical and full of wonder, and it's built on the ashes of the world that came before, a world of humans who destroyed themselves and left nothing behind but ruins and radiation and the fading echo of a sitcom theme song hummed by a man who forgot why he was singing it. Think about that image for a second. 1,000 years from now, long after everyone you know is gone, a man with blue skin and no memory of who he used to be might still be humming a tune from a TV show that no longer exists, from a civilization that no longer exists, and he won't know why the melody makes him sad. He'll just know that it does. That's the smallest, most personal horror Adventure Time ever created, and it might also be the most devastating. Because it's not about cosmic forces or nuclear bombs or undead sorcerers. It's about the fragments of who we were that survive even after everything else has been taken away. It's about the ghost of a melody outlasting the person who loved it.
That's Adventure Time. Candyland on the surface, dark underneath. And the dark part is what makes the candy taste so sweet. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe to our channel. We cover lore like this every week, breaking down the stories hiding inside the shows you thought you knew. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And if you want to see us break down more hidden horror in animated shows, that video is on screen right now. I'll see you in the next one.